Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alpha Bebe, and I'm a faculty member here at McMaster in the Faculty of Humanities. I teach across a few different programs, including the IBH program. We've got some IBH students here repping, and also the Global Peace and Social Justice program. And one of the hats I'm wearing today is as faculty lead of African Black Diaspora Studies here at McMaster. We have an undergraduate minor, we have some dedicated courses, and an expanding ecosystem of scholars, students, and researchers that are doing work at the intersection of Black studies and African studies and diaspora studies. And one of the things that we've been doing is strengthening our partnerships across campus and in the community. And so we're really excited about today because it represents one of the fruits of those partnerships. So I'll just talk briefly to first of all welcome you and welcome all of our speakers and share with you that today is a kickoff of our African Black Diaspora Studies, our ABLD seminar series. So we have seminar series. We've been running them for I guess last year was our first year doing a full program of them. We usually do a few per year, and this year we're also going to be doing, looks like Hosea, who's the chair of our seminar series this year and last year as well, confirmed that we have 3 more. So this is our first for the year, and then we'll have one in November, and then likely one in January and one in March. And so I would encourage, I hope you will consider coming out to the rest of them. I would encourage you to please join our newsletter, join us on socials, and yeah, one of the great things is the opportunity through those seminar series to bring folks together and have conversations that are outside of the classroom, outside of traditional kind of lecture and seminar settings, and very much more sort of genuinely in conversation. So once again, thank you for being here, and I will pass it off to Betty to introduce herself and the rest of the day.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is working, right? Okay, hi. I'm Betty Julian. I'm the senior curator at McMaster Museum of Art, and it's great to partner with Alpha and the Africa and Black Diasporic Studies Institute, and this is the first time we're doing it. So I hope all goes well. I'm just going to put my glasses on so I can read. So I wanted to welcome the artist and Christina, who's the curator of The Great Unseen, Aaron Jones, and Janice Reid, who are both invited artists in the exhibition. And I get the, And so I'm going to say a few words just to set us on our journey for this public program and panel. So first, I want to recognize and to give thanks to all the keepers of the sky, land, and water. As the first collaboration and the first seminar of this academic year for ABLD, I'm very honored to be able to bring the museum into conversation with the broader Black community and diasporic community here at McMaster and in Hamilton. So I have the wonderful task to introduce Stacy Creech, who is going to moderate today, and to thank Stacy for being the moderator for the panel and the conversation with regard to on Black diasporic art and cultural conversation, storage to spotlight. Also, the framework for today's panel conversation has been created by Stacy and Christina, and I want to thank them for their exceptional work on generating an outline for today's panel and conversation. So, Stacy Creech is a postdoctoral fellow here at McMaster, the Faculty of Humanities, and the Office of the Vice Provost, Teaching and Learning, where she teaches and collaborates across Africa and Black Diaspora Studies, Latin American and Latinx, is that how you say it? Latinx Studies, English, Cultural Studies, Arts and Sciences. An interdisciplinary humanist, originally from the Dominican Republic, her work moves at the intersections of literature, cultural studies, and memory, centering relational, hemispheric, and diasporic approaches to Blackness and belonging in the Americas. Through her teaching, scholarship, and community collaborations. She engages questions of visibility, refusal, and transformative futures, creating spaces where students and the broader community can think critically and collectively about art, archives, and lived experience. Welcome, Stacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alpha and Betty, for grounding us in the importance of this work. I'd like to thank you as well, both of you. I love collaborations, so I'm super excited to be here. And I just want to say thank you for your vision and your ongoing commitment to building spaces where Black and diasporic creativity can thrive, in scholarship as well. So I'd like to say good afternoon, everyone, and I'm super excited to be here. Like I said, I'm delighted to welcome you into this space. So thank you for joining us. We want to begin by grounding ourselves in where we are. So McMaster University stands on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. For me, this acknowledgement isn't just a formality. It isn't vacuous. It isn't cursory. The Dish with One Spoon Agreement asks us to share territory and resources with mutual respect and responsibility, to keep the dish full for everyone. I believe this offers a profound lesson as we gather here today to talk about absence and presence, visibility and invisibility, and what it means to make space for one another across histories, geographies, and sure, creative spaces. And so today's conversation is deeply connected to these ideas of relationality and responsibility. Basically, how art can help us see differently, how it can unsettle dominant narratives, and how it can create room for new forms of belonging and collective memory. And so with that, I'd like to basically say that today's panel takes place in the context of The Great Unseen, an exhibition curated by Christina Leslie that foregrounds Black, Caribbean, and diasporic artists, many of whom have historically and traditionally been excluded from dominant art historical narratives. The exhibition is wonderful. You should go see it if you haven't yet. But it's drawing on rarely seen works in the museum's collection. New acquisitions and invited contributions, bringing them into dialogue in ways that challenge absence and make space for presence, for resistance, for relation, and for relationality. As a moderator and as someone who teaches and researches and basically thinks within the fields of Black studies, Africa and Black Diaspora Studies, Afro-Latinx studies, Black Latin American studies, and Black Caribbean studies, and cultural production, I see this today as an opportunity to think with the exhibition's themes and to think with you all, and to bring them into conversation with the lived, embodied, and creative practices of our panelists. This is not meant to be a lecture, but a dialogue. And so between artists and curators, and between panelists and audience. So I invite you, all of you here as listeners and participants, to think with us and join the conversation later during the Q&A at the end. So with that, let me briefly introduce our panelists before inviting them to say more about themselves and their work. So here to my left is Christina Leslie, artist and curator of The Great Unseen. Give her a round of applause. Christina, who through experimental photography and text examines the intersections of history, memory, and race. Then we have Aaron Jones, multidisciplinary artist who works with collage. Thank you. Works with collage and photography to reflect on memory, belonging, and world building. And then the wonderful Janice Reid, who is photographer and storyteller whose work explores Caribbean diasporic histories, memory, and migration. So, Christina, I'd love to start with you. Could you introduce yourself and share a bit about your practice in curatorial work here and what you brought to this project as curator?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm so short, so I'm just going to move this a little bit. So I've been a practicing artist for almost 25 years. Most of my work is lens-based, and I was recently, I joined McMaster Museum of Art during their curatorial mentorship program back in 2023, and I had learned so much, and my mentor, Betty Julian, she was really great at just kind of believing that I could possibly try curating as well. So she gave me this kind of vote of confidence, and then I was invited to come back and be the interim assistant curator at the museum. And she had said to me, Christina, I think it would be nice if you took on this challenge of curating a collection exhibition. And I thought, okay. But because my own art practice is deeply rooted in my Caribbean heritage, particularly my Jamaican background, a lot of the work that I do is, as of late, is around the sugar trade industry. So I've been making photographs out of sugar, and I'm really interested in materiality and experimentation and form. So naturally, that moved into how I was going to curate this exhibition. So I thought, how can I use materiality, experimentation, build upon my Caribbean heritage, and then amplify Black Caribbean and global African diasporic stories and narratives, and just also marginalized stories. And so that's kind of the thread that I was working with, or where the mindset was and how I started to develop the show. And I'm sure some of your questions will move into more details after, but that's a high-level overview.
Do you want to show them the slideshow?
Yes.
Or yeah?
So for those of you who have seen it and just kind of want a reminder, or who haven't seen the exhibition yet, we just did a quick little slideshow so that you have some reference to some of the images and some of the works that are in the exhibition. So when we're talking about it, you kind of have an idea. So I'm just going to take a little pause.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. So I'm obsessed with clapping, so thank you so much. Aaron and Janice, could I then ask you please to introduce yourselves, your practice, and how your work sits within the exhibition?
I guess I'll start. Can you guys hear me? I feel like I need to move this over. Okay. Right. All right. I feel like I should be singing. I don't know. My name is Janice Reid. I'm a photographer, but I feel like I use photography as a visual language through fashion and through fashion photography. I feel like through that way it is, I guess through how we read editorial photography as a language. I think that I use that as a medium to tell bigger stories through my works. I started out in photography, I will say, back in 2018 with my Real Love series. I've had the opportunity to show across the GTA and also in London, Amsterdam, and also in Jamaica. I'm born here in Canada, but I feel like with a lot of my roots and with my practice, I have this, I guess, this romance with Christina, with Jamaica. It's one of those kids of being part of the diaspora. You're looking for your home, you're looking for representation, and oftentimes you go back home to put those pieces together. And I feel like with my practice, I am relearning the things that I see in the world, and I feel like I want to share with everybody else. And hopefully that's what you read and you see through this photograph, but also throughout my practice.
Thank you so much, Janice. Aaron?
Yeah, everyone. That's good. Okay. Yeah, I'm Aaron Jones. I feel like as I've been practicing art for somewhere around 10 years now, I've been becoming known as a collage artist, but I think of myself more as an artist using collage primarily. And yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so my practice is primary collage. Like there's a collage piece that Christina had in the show that's mine. And my work kind of comes from a place of like family lore and storytelling, and also my own like childhood adventures in just navigating the Ontario landscape. So it's kind of like a collision of Jamaican heritage and like nature adventuring with like Ontario and just greenery here.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think that this is so important to establish from the get-go, because what I'm hearing here is that across Blackness and Black studies and diasporic thinking, embodiment is always important and it's always present. And so embodied knowledge and embodied experiences are always already a creditable form of knowledge. And so, Janice, you said something really crucial too. You said you're using your photography as a medium to tell bigger stories, and I feel like this is a common thread here. And so, Christina, I turn to you again as both curator, but also as practicing artist. How did you imagine the works in the Great Unseen speaking to one another, and the broader narratives that you're sort of inviting us into seeing and engaging with in the space?
Well, it's interesting because like Aaron and I have shown together from Movers and Makers, and so it's interesting. And then Janice and I have also shown together through Band Gallery, and so I think, and Erica DeFreitas, whose work is also in the work. All of us are in the Wedge collection as well, so we all know each other in ways, and so it was interesting that I had the opportunity to curate my own contemporaries in a way, but then honoring them because I know their practice as an artist, but then how do I lend that to the curation? So that's kind of where I started to think, but then as I was looking through some of the more historical works that the museum had, I was interested in how each piece might have a conversation with each other, and I'll use 2 examples. Kareem Anthony Ferreira's work, it's a self-portrait, I guess, of a young child, and then it's a silk screen print, but then we have this other print by Carl Appel that's called Little Boy, and it's very abstract, but it's still representational. So I almost felt like these 2 works were responding to the theme of maybe childhood, even though they look totally different. But I thought, how could those 2 speak together? So then I started kind of building upon, like, maybe I'll put this work on this side of the room and the other work, and then like across from each other, so not directly beside each other. And then as I started like thinking about those relationships, I thought about Janice Reid's work and her piece Marcus and how it kind of responded to this work we had by Peter Blake called Penny Black. And then I thought about Aaron Jones's work and how it worked with, I said 2, but I'm going on further. But then Aaron Jones's work and how it worked, I kind of sat across from Tadashi's, I can never say his last name properly without butchering it, Kawamatsa's Favela's maquette. So these are kind of the things. And then lastly, our museum houses a huge coin collection. Yeah. And I thought, but we don't have any Canadian currency, much less currency, about Black history. And then I invited artist Kwame Delfish, who's sitting at the back there. And I thought about, yeah, so he created these coins for the Canadian Royal Mint. So I thought, well, how can I bring those into conversation? So every piece is intentionally put together and grouped together within the space.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Aaron and Janice, how does this all make you feel? Like, how does it make you feel to see your work and to have your work situated within this context? And maybe you can speak a little bit about, as Christina saying, she's your contemporary. Is there an element of trust there as well as she's curating? I think that's really cool to think about. And how do you feel about not only your work situated within this context, but in dialogue with both the collection and other pieces and artists?
You want me to go first? I can start this one.
Okay.
I get really excited seeing all the different materials come together in the space. And I think of that as something that's like honest to artistic practices. So especially like in like a diasporic setting, access to like traditional artistic practices isn't necessarily like the most common thing. So to see, I'll even start to see like the coins that are like minted to come to like sculpture, and then there's a couple collages, prints, like all those things coming together kind of makes it seem very authentic to me. And it's kind of like I saw many people's like upbringing and their own like inner workings of their mind come together in the same space. So it really speaks to, for me, the title, The Great Unseen, because it's like all these things do like come out of like the shadows in some degree. And to speak to like working together, I really like collaboration. Whether it's like successful or not, I think it's an achievement in itself, just having access to like work parallel or with one another.
Amazing, thank you.
I feel like I'm really grateful, and I feel that having Christina as like a contemporary to also, and like she mentioned, we've shown together, and I've been a great admirer of her as an artist and how she goes after her opportunities. So when, you know, just like even side conversations that we've had, and she's like, I love your work, Janice. And I'm like, really? And not me gushing or trying to get compliments off of my work, but it's really wonderful when you have a contemporary who's also really profound in the work that they do and have such a unique eye, provides you that compliment and also that context of like solidifying you, like, okay, like affirming you. So with her curating the show, and she's like, Janice, I really like this piece. And again, we both have this thing that we're super humble. I don't know if it's us being like women who is practicing art, but it's just very like, really, Christina? I know, like, to speak for myself that I'm really like, not unsure, but it's wonderful to hear her because saying great things about my work. So when she provided me this opportunity and I seen the exhibit come all together, I was really excited when I saw the images, and I'm like, whoa, like, you killed it. Yeah, like you absolutely did. It was really refreshing to see, and also showing alongside of other contemporaries, and I think it's my first time sharing like any space with Aaron as well, and seeing Aaron's work throughout the, like, you know, in Toronto and the AGO, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm with these guys, and I feel very happy to be alongside, and also just seeing my work in conversations with other works that are a part of the collection at the museum. I think that it provides a little bit more of, I guess, more context, and I think that it shows the importance of what you do when, like, sometimes you're not able to see it, but when you're seeing it in relationships to other things around you, you're like, whoa, okay. It draws out certain themes even more prominent.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you so much. So Christina, I want to keep thinking about the space itself. And so I'd like to talk a little bit more about your curatorial choices and decisions. And so I'm talking about or thinking through the corrugated metal walls and the purple palette. And so they seem to create an embodied spatial experience. And as I've told you many times, when I went, I felt myself, the room was telling me and directing me where to go. So I never felt like, oh, I don't know where to go next. Can you talk a little bit or share a little bit about your thinking behind these design decisions?
Sure. So with me thinking about the design decisions, I do always think you should give people their flowers. So I do want to thank Sam Dilling and Nicole Levesque, who are an exceptional exhibition preparator team. When I was thinking about these choices, I had to consult Sam quite a bit and say, Sam, is this possible? And he was like, anything is possible, Christina. So, but things like the color, the purple wall. Well, if you can't tell, purple is my favorite color. But the inspiration for the color purple was literally Alice Walker's The Color Purple. And if you've read the novel or even seen the movie or this crazy musical, the color purple is referenced so often in that book, and in the book, it kind of, the themes are around using it to represent resilience and transformation and kind of going up against various systems of oppression, but the characters themselves keep evolving. And I thought about a lot of the works, and a lot of these artists have had to evolve, transform themselves, and I think if you're an artist who's from a marginalized community, we're often shut out of some of these spaces. So I thought, why wouldn't I paint the wall purple? Because I think it also goes against the sterile, neutral idea of the white cube that sometimes gallery spaces, institutional gallery spaces, are referred to. And so purple was like, it was like a no-brainer for me. And then just to make it the feature wall as you come in, it's like smack dab in your face. But then the corrugated metal walls, well, if you're from, a community who, like from the Caribbean communities, and I'm gonna say Caribbean community because I'm gonna just speak from my own reference point. You go to places like Jamaica, and I didn't realize we all have Jamaican background. I didn't even mean to be biased that way, but you will see a lot of like houses, different places made from corrugated metal, and this repurposing of this material to kind of bring a new life form. And then I thought about things like wheat pasting and how they apply wheat pasting to do advertisements. Like here in North America, you'll have these big, massive billboards, maybe these LED screens, but there they have to use materials that are cost effective, but also what's available. So I thought, well, why don't we make walls, temp walls from corrugated metal? And I'm hoping I'm not talking too much about this, but because there's another exhibit adjacent to it called The Great Sea, which is about antiquities and rare books that are referencing the Mediterranean. And if we think about the Mediterranean, and not to sound pejorative, but this has been also a site of like imperialism, colonialism, and a lot of communities have been displaced from, many empires that are situated within the Caribbean, the Mediterranean. So I was thinking about like the architecture that is present there, like columns and these big, pantheons. So corrugated metal is also kind of like there's a juxtaposition there. So things like that. These are all things I thought about. And then just another choice, when you were talking about sightlines. Sightlines is really important because it makes you have to move around the space and think about what's being seen, what's not being seen, because some artworks are hidden because they're on the other side of these walls. And so these are kind of all the things I was thinking about with the choices of this exhibit.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think a couple of things. It does feel like a Caribbean space. And so my own background is from the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and also Barbados. And so when I went and I saw the tin, the corrugated, I was like, yes, this is great. And I think as a Caribbean person, the sounds that escaped me when I went from the great sea to the great unseen, I was like, ooh. So I thought this was really good. Just a question, now that you're talking about institutional gallery spaces, for everybody or for whoever wants to sort of answer, I want to think through absence, visibility, but presence as well. And so the exhibition engages with the unseen, right? So I'm thinking about what works are withheld, overlooked, or excluded. But it is framing absence as generative rather than empty. And so how do you all see your work challenging what, institutions or institutional gallery spaces choose to preserve, choose to display, choose to value?
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if, I guess when I'm making my work, I have it or in my mind that it's going to be in an institutional space. But when it ends up, or if it ends up in that type of space, I feel like I just kind of noted before, I feel like the meaning becomes more powerful and more pronounced when it's there. And I had a few opportunities to do it, and it's also like not like a plug, but my work is also at the AGH, and how they situated it in on the second floor with all the portraiture, right? So you have something that's more classical and more historical, with something that is also noting the historical significance, but also in a contemporary sense. So when like I said, I don't have the ideal of having it in these places, but I feel like with my own practices, it becomes very more important to see it in these places. Because growing up, I never had, when I went to the galleries, I never saw anyone who looked like me. So I feel that it's such a wonderful place that we're in, because we are actively changing what can and shifting what can be seen as work that belongs in an institution.
It's kind of funny. I have mixed feelings about it. Kind of faster than I expected it to happen, or even thought it could happen. My work has been in a handful of institutions. And because of that, in doing representational work with the Black body, I've tried to pull away from that for some form of sovereign feeling, and trying to do abstract work. But at the same time, there's still a feeling looming over me that I have to have characters that look like me and my friends and family floating through the work in some capacity, because I think about how easy it could be to forget who the artist is, what they look like, and where they come from. So it's quite often in the forefront of my mind, thinking about if it does go to an institution, the longevity there, and how it tells stories in that space and represents people in that space as well.
I'm going to speak from the artist's perspective. I'm thinking about just the trajectory of my own art practice, and it hasn't really been. I had shown in many institutional spaces, but in a group setting, or based on but not just like as a solo art, like having my own solo show. And it wasn't until last fall in November that the Robert McLaughlin Gallery gave me a solo show there, but I was tasked with having to fill both both rooms, and that was just super daunting to me. And I say this because it, like Aaron said, his career took off, I would say, pretty fast. But it's taken me almost 25 years to be recognized in some of these spaces. So it just shows, like, depends on where you started and stopped. We're still, the avenue to get there in the vehicle isn't always as prominent. Sometimes we have to help each other out to get to these spaces. And that's one thing about Betty Julian. I have to say, Betty's such a strong champion of recognizing these things and accessibility and these opportunities and providing opportunities for us, because some of them have not been there, you know? And the fact that now Betty recognized my practice, and then said, you come in and try your hand at being assistant curator, and then taking that experience of a practicing artist and then trying to bring it into the institution and have those conversations that I've had with myself within that exhibit, like whether or not people recognize it. For me, that's something also that was like a veil through which, or not a veil, but perspective of which this exhibition came to be. I hope I answered that question.
No, you did, absolutely. Thank you so much, all of you. What I'm hearing here, and this is something that we're kind of already touching on, but I hear things like the work becomes more powerful, more pronounced. Never saw anyone who looked like me. Yeah, I'm also hearing things about recognition, and also on the other side of it, tokenism a little bit, right? And how easy it is, or would be, to forget the artist. And so, coming from Caribbean spaces, and this is something that I sort of invite my students into thinking about all the time. Sometimes if you go on like a website to see something about Jamaica, it's always like through sort of like extractivist lenses of like, come explore the beaches. And when you see the beaches are devoid of Black Jamaican people. Yeah. And so the beaches in Barbados are devoid of Black Bajans. And so I'd like to think through this a little bit more, because your works are entering here, institutional spaces like the McMaster Museum of Art. And so do you find then that they shift in meaning? Yeah. I hear yes, but also how do you navigate being in conversation with, but perhaps more prominently in tension with, institutional narratives? Thoughts?
Do you guys want to go?
I have a little idea about that. Yeah. Like for my own practice, whether it be like art or day to day, there's like parts of Blackness I'd like to just make like normal as a concept in Canada. Yeah. So maybe it's like where you eat or where you shop, but even in the art, to say, I want it to feel like it just happened. And so if it just happened and then it's packaged to be in the institution, that's the way it is. But I like the idea when people can come to the institution and then see work that's like, oh, I never thought I could see that, or I never imagined this is why I was coming to the institution. And there's like, it's almost like magic or like secrets that like showing certain art will show that like certain things are possible. It like raises possibilities. That's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, especially because these institutions were never made for us or made for us to be here, right? And so we weren't thought at all. So this is so powerful. Janice, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have plenty of thoughts about that. I feel with how I started, I guess, out with my career, and like, I guess the first image that had its cycle or prominence was like my real love series called Black Power. So I feel like from the jump, I've been making work that has this pushback against, like, I guess the major institution, knowingly and unknowingly. Like, it wasn't like I said, I didn't make work for institutions, but I wanted to make work that had a strong voice and has my point of view, and filling the void that I haven't seen in the art world. So when I see my work in these spaces, I feel like I said, it's kind of really powerful. Like, you have Marcus Garvey with a woman, but also with my friend Leonie there, and in conversation with the Penny Black piece, I feel like it also goes into the story of, like, the Black women and Black women bodies. And when I first did the piece, I wasn't thinking in that type of layer, but when it's in conversation with that other piece, it's more pronounced. And I feel like what you just mentioned with talking about, like, the Jamaican diaspora and how we are telling our narratives, because a lot of these times, a lot of things, like, it's absent. And you always see this, like, cookie cutter imagery of Jamaica, and it's like Jamaica in a tourism type of sense of it, but we're not looking through Jamaica as, like, colonial history or as a connector amongst the world, right? Through even as, like, us as people. I feel like with Jamaican identity, it is a very complex story. I feel like we don't look at the Caribbean as Creole people. We're not looked as that way, but we are. And it's like we are the products of, like, a new society, right? Of the new world, the importance that it has played. So I feel like as a Canadian artist and as a Jamaican artist, it's the work that we do is, we might not know at the time of making it because we are in it, and we don't have the foresight because we're currently in it. But when I step away, now I'm getting the opportunities to step away and see the bigger picture of everything, of how it is so crucial for us to just do what we're doing, even though it's so innate and natural to us. But when you step away, you're like, wow, do I know that what I'm doing is revolutionary? Just as an art maker, being a Black woman making this work, being a Black person and saying, this is my perspective, whether how big or small it is. I think I had that type of realization, especially last year of when I showed my work at the National Portrait Gallery. It was just like, whoa, okay. For me, doing this work is exceptional. Yeah. And you're creating a brand new landscape of what Black art is. You're also filling the void of what Black Canadian art is, and being part of the Caribbean and filling so many holes and gaps.
I kind of have two thoughts about this. So I'm going to speak from, like, my early days. I made this body of work in my thesis when I went to OCAD called Everything Irie. And I interviewed all my Jamaican relatives and friends, and I actually interviewed them, and then I extracted their interviews, and I wrote out all the texts in patois. So you have the portrait with the patois, and I used kind of Jamaican signifiers, like, the Pan-African colors, because because I know readily that's what people would recognize. Yeah. But really, the language is what's really kind of ours in how you're reading it. So it's forcing the viewer to read the text and sound it out phonetically. But, when I made the work, I wasn't thinking about the institution. I wasn't thinking about how that would be delivered. But in 2009, it ended up going to Prague, and they had to translate the text to Czech. So I thought, how are they going to even understand it? But the idea was that people can understand personal stories and narratives, and this idea of displacement, or this idea of migration and immigrating. And so I thought it would be lost, but it wasn't. And then it got sold. Then the AGO bought a copy of the series for, thank you. They bought a copy of the series for their permanent collection. And in my head, I was like, yo, people are going to be in the AGO, have to read patois?
Yeah.
Like, that's an institutional space, and you're hearing language that's not English, or it's been called broken dialect.
Yeah.
Like, the way we view people who speak pidgin or patois, these different kind of dialects, you know, it's like I'm amplifying this language.
Yeah.
But my second thought is, as Janice was speaking about, her piece is called Marcus because she's referencing the revolutionary leader Marcus Garvey. And if you miss that piece, and I don't think even Janice sees how powerful this image is. Marcus Garvey is in the corner of the image as a woman is talking on the phone. Yeah. And I was thinking, and she's outside a Jamaican home, and I recognize this because it's part of my background and history, but it's almost like she's on the phone calling the ancestors. Yes. And I was thinking, like, Marcus Garvey is revolutionary, and then this piece is in an institution that we're trying to revolutionize. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just thought, like, so many layers, and these are so, I'm getting the chills talking about this, I'm sorry. It's just like, these are the things that I think, as makers, we're not even sometimes aware of what we're doing. Yeah. We're just making work to make work. Where it lives is where it lives, but it's almost like we're happy that we get recognized, but we don't need to be recognized.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is so powerful. Yeah, please clap. Sorry. This is so powerful, and I think it speaks so much to what art is capable of doing and evoking as well, right? I think about, there's a wonderful Black St. Lucian poet by the name of Canisia Lubrin. I don't know if anybody's familiar. She's fantastic. And she actually talks about this quite a bit because she writes some of her poetry. She's based in Toronto, and she writes some of her poetry in St. Lucian Creole. And so when she goes into spaces where people are like asking her for a translation, she basically says, why would I make myself legible to the very thing that renders me illegible? And so these are the kinds of things that I think about so much, especially when we're talking about histories of exclusion and absence. That can be powerful, but also very, very vulnerable. And so I wanted to invite you to share, if you would like to. Were there moments of risk for you in what you chose to reveal or withhold or make visible through your work or through the space or through the conversations between works that you chose, Christina, or even through your own work, Janice or Aaron? Like, how do you navigate those stakes as artists and as curator? And both, too.
Oh, you want me? I can go. It's okay. You go then.
So I'll think specifically about the Great Unseen, the exhibit itself. There were two pieces I was really not too sure if I should include. One is an image of this, I guess, what would you call it, like a noble patron, and there's a little black boy. And obviously someone at the time purchased this item and thought this was appropriate. But now we're having these conversations where maybe some people, that might be canceled, right? Like they might be like, no, we shouldn't include this work. And then there is another piece by Peter Blake called Ebony Tarzan, and you'll see it there. And I was like, do I add that into the show or not? And I hemmed and hawed, and then I thought, no, because the whole point of the conversation is the zeitgeist in which these works were purchased, they thought they were fine. And I think now I had to unearth them so we can still have these conversations about how do they relate to other works within the space? Can we have conversations about appropriation, about things that people, painting us or drawing us or making work about us that's not really us. And so those were like, that was a risk for me. I didn't know if it would go over well, but I think instinctively I was like, nah, I'm gonna add that in there. And the feedback's been like, yep, I get it. I understand why you put that in there. And then where we placed them within the show, I think was really important because again, it creates this dialogue of like really colonial representation versus, representation that's very reflective and yeah. Yes.
I'm so glad you decided to listen to that sort of and add them in there. As my students say, I might be in my villain era, and so every time I see things like that, I'm like, yes. Erin, Janice, do you have?
Well, just to go on what Christina was saying and seeing the placement of certain works, and I think it was important to have those pieces a part of the conversation. It's one of the, I guess, it is like you see what was once was acceptable, and now you have the self-actualization of Black artists saying, well, this is who we are. This is how I see myself. And you can see that it's totally different from how we were once depicted. And especially that one image with the little boy and the woman, and you see the boys in the shadows, right? And I think that it's so powerful that you have now works of portraiture with, especially with Dalali's image, it's like you have them in the center, you have the face, you see the face of the sitter, and it's much different type of care when a photographer is photographing their own community, right? Yeah. So you see that very more prominently. Risk within my own work, I feel like I need to be riskier. I feel like I need to walk on the wild side a little bit more when it comes to my work. And I think that's what I think of myself, like, reflect on a lot, is like, what is something that what I will be creating that I'm going to be really proud of? Like, it's not that I don't like the work that I'm currently doing or have any disdain. It's not anything like that. But I want to, there's a side of me that's just like, I want to really create something that is like, I blow myself away, right? And further push the envelope either through the art making practice of it all or what I'm capturing. So I think about the risk, and it's like, I don't know, if you're thinking about like, you're not looking at yourself as an artist and you're like, oh, I can't make this because of the viewer or the institution or who's going to acquire it. I think that's like, you're not in the right space. Yeah. You have to be doing something for yourself.
I'm just thinking about speaking to like risk in the work making, but what was the other question? Sorry.
I just basically asked how you navigate those stakes as artist and curator, and what you chose to reveal or withhold or put out there or not, or. Like a big part of my practice, being collage, is like the risk of ruining print that exists already, and. I kind of was saying it to Janice earlier, like kind of you have to embrace like the failure of it. The piece in the show is like on a canvas, and there's also like little bug stickers on it, different types of paper, and I really wanted to try to have things from all these different like desperate places come together. And for majority of the time I'm working on the piece, I didn't think it was going to work, but I like the idea of trying things that may not work to get to some new type of place. Yeah. And I just think it's like important for the practice of creating newness of like, is to embrace like big unsures. That's amazing. I want to thank you all for sharing so openly with us here in this space. And then I'd like to maybe think about how the exhibition as a whole, The Great Unseen, is inviting us to maybe reimagine belonging, reimagine what cultural memory is and relationality across the Caribbean and its diasporas. I mean, we're in this place we call Canada, and so does that matter? And how is the exhibition and your own work and your curatorial work, how is that inviting us to reimagine the Caribbean and its diasporas? Thoughts?
Being here kind of reimagines it. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I just think of like making oneself like just feel really normal in the present moment is like creating something new in itself. I don't think my family really considered like how they navigate Canada coming here. Not that that's a bad thing, but at the same time, being in like art spaces and critical spaces as we continuously like think about that. For myself, I just think like being able to feel comfortable and just be is like kind of like a revolutionary thing as someone from the Caribbean diaspora, because it's a very small place. It's not the biggest population, and it's quite amazing, for lack of a better word, that like we can like even have this conversation is to say what are the chances.
Thank you. Christina or Janice?
You want to go?
No, I want to go last.
Okay. I'm going to now change my hat to the artist hat. I was thinking about my exhibit, Lickalax, that I just had last year, and I wanted everything about that exhibit to be Jamaican. Like, I was like, we are here, you're gonna see us, and even if you're not Jamaican, you're Caribbean, and I'm sure much of the imagery and some of the foods, you know, we're gonna experience it all. So for that show, like, I made sure the food, I hired 2 friends of mine who share Caribbean heritage, and we came up with a very like Jamaican like menu. I asked my father to make ackee and saltfish for the food. Like, and it's funny because, you know, in the way we situated the space, the first space was, you know, about the colonial history of Jamaica and the sugar trade industry and the transatlantic slave trade. But I was like, but our story doesn't end there. The story moves on into community and memory and us revisiting homes. And you don't have to be Jamaican to understand the idea of family and community and reconnecting with this place. And to see that in a Canadian perspective and institution, for me, I felt, I don't know, man, I just felt very proud. I was like, yo, I did that. Like, you know, like, I did that. You know, I felt great. Yeah. And so why I say this is because people who came to the show, they're like, oh, I feel like that's how your home would be. Like, I felt home. I felt at home. And that's what I wanted people to walk away with and feel. And that, to me, is where, like, you know, you can change people's perspectives and you can represent your. It doesn't have to be about this. It just, can you see me and can you see yourself in that work?
Perfect, thank you. You succeeded tremendously. Thank you so much, Janice.
I think for some communities here in Canada, we are very lucky in a sense that we have the community to be able to reimagine our home life, like, or our Jamaican identity. I'll speak more towards that, obviously, because I'm Jamaican. But like down to the food that we eat. Like when I go to Jamaica, I went to Jamaica like earlier this year. And they'd be like, oh, you know, you missed the breadfruit, you missed the mango. I'm like, we have that all in Canada. I eat like this back home. Literally last week I had like, we were talking about, not to gross you guys out, hopefully it's not gross to you guys, but like cow foot, like we eat that and it's like, oh, I'm like, I ate this last week. My mom made it. So I think we do that knowingly and unknowingly through just your family dynamics and through culture and through food. And that plays out in the work that we do because of you're creating your own memories and your own attachment to a place that for some people it is just like home, but some people is very foreign. I felt like until my recent trips of going down to Jamaica by myself, it has created new memories and new connection to my homeland, not through the escape of like a family, like the family safety net, like, okay, I'm going with my mom, or like I'm from a very rural area in Jamaica. I'm out in the mountains, we're out in Clarendon, so like it's one of those things like once you go up, you don't come back down until you're ready to go to the airport. You're like, I'm out where the mountains are, you know? So I feel very happy that now I have my own relationship with Jamaica, and against with Jamaica we have such a way of like, I guess there's certain signifiers that Christina just pointed out through colors, through music, that also becomes very commercialized, and you just like I've disclosed and talked to Christina about a project that I would love to do. And it comes to like with my like Rastafari heritage, and she's like, you have to do it. And I'm like, I don't think it's something that I think it takes time to do it, because I don't want to create an image that you have the man with dreadlocks and you see the colors and like, you know, you just see, yeah man, everything's Irie. Like, I don't want that commercialization of that figure. And I think that with Jamaica, it has been packaged and sold through music and through like symbolism of Bob Marley, because he's just a universal figure all across the world. So like you have the image of Bob Marley and you just already know, oh yeah, like that's Jamaica. Or like you talk to people when you speak, it's like, oh, I'm Jamaican. Oh, you smoke weed? And it's like, oh gosh, okay. Like I feel like there's really a surface level of what we have, I guess, been reduced wise to. And hopefully through my work and like obviously through all of our works, we're showing and like, this is how I see my Jamaicanness. These are the stories that I'm pulling. This is how I want to educate myself and educate everybody about my identity and our placement in the world and our position.
Thank you so much. I'm very aware that I could just hang out and ask you all my questions, and that's all I want to do. But I want to open the floor to you, the audience, as well, so you can have a chance to ask your questions as well. So I wasn't sure if anybody had any sort of burning questions. Do we have a microphone, or how do we, for the audience, maybe? Or maybe you can get up and I can... Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Oh, great at projecting. Christina, I was curious. First off, thank you so much for a beautiful show and bringing such incredible artists to Hamilton. Thank you. And also thank you so much for including like the problematic parts of a collection that often, like when people of color are invited into a collection, they have like two expectations. Like one is to like demonize it and like make a work about like, and then make a project about like writing this wrong. And like I'm so appreciative of like this work that's just like there to as like this like nuance to this collection and this like history. So thank you. Because Hamilton is like, well, you know, we're all in Hamilton. Like we know like it's not a perfect story. So why would the collection be any different? But I'm curious, like in getting to spend so much time with this collection, like what what did you like learn and notice about it?
Okay. I mean, I really realize that like collections really are at the helm of whoever is kind of in charge, and based on whatever choice, like whatever fancies their choice, right? And what they think is worthy of being acquired and not. And I have realized, like, when you're thinking about collections in museums, again, it's at the whim of whoever's in charge and thinks what is deemed worthy of being shown. And I say this because I think part of museum management of collections should be reviewing older works and works that might not be appropriate anymore. And if they aren't appropriate anymore, how do we like have conversations? How can we still include them still in shows and not necessarily demonize them, because at the time we didn't think they should be demonized. But like, and so these are kind of like the things, not just at McMaster Museum of Art, but I think a lot of collections across the board are kind of very similar. But then you have people like Pamela Edmonds and Betty who are saying, you know, we need to broaden all the gaps, but not just broaden gaps because we need representation. The works that we're using to kind of fill or mitigate that are so meaningful, and they're multi-layered. They're not just, oh, we need to have representation. I think the newly acquired works with, you know, Aaron's, even though Sandra Brewster's work wasn't on display, but Sandra Brewster and, you know, June Clark, who are, you know, June Clark is somebody who I deeply admired for years, and Radcliffe Bailey, also somebody who I had looked at strongly during my master's. Like, these are all works that they don't just address gaps, but they strengthen, I think, the collection and can build, like kind of Aaron's talking about story building, world building. They are building upon itself. And I think that still needs to continue. And just really quickly, you know, you can have a collection show, and some people only keep it at a collection show. I thought, well, then how do I also view a collection that needs to have artists that aren't in the collection that people should think about including? So these are why you know, Janice and Delali and then Kwame, you know, these are artists who are all currently making work. I love you guys. But this is kind of where I was thinking, like, these are artists that collections and people who are in charge of acquiring work should also still consider. And so that's kind of like the thing I learned. And, you know, I'm hoping that this exhibit kind of addresses all of that in the research. And then second, can I just say one more point? You know, one of the driving forces was the statistic that I read that only 2% of a museum's collection is ever really shown. Much of it, like just languages, is in the vaults and the storage. So why are we collecting then if it's just gonna sit there? So these are things I think, you know, I think a lot of museums are on the trend of like having contemporary exhibits, bringing in visiting artists, and which is all great, and we should still do that, but how can we build programming that includes what we have and also speaks to current practices and current artists practicing? I hope that answered your question. But yes.
Does anybody else clapping? Maybe. Yeah. Here we go. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? And if you do, you can ask. Yeah.
It's more of a comment.
Yeah.
Is that I think Christina is speaking to something, is that there has also not been a lot of curators that have been in senior positions in Canadian museums, and public galleries across. It's only been the last 5 to 10 years that's happened. So there is a cultural intervention. Myself as a senior curator, I'm not going to repeat what's already been done. I'm going to try and find ways to critically address actually the use of the collection. Which I can get into trouble about, but I think that it's such a McMaster, the collection of McMasters. We have a huge European painting collection. that everybody is envious of or whatever, but in some ways we don't have the resources to present things. So museums have historically been underfunded, particularly university-affiliated galleries, and because of that, it puts you in a complicated situation with the collection.
Yeah.
So when Pamela Edmonds was here, I'm building on what she was doing, and also with the Indigenous collection, also making certain decisions, but also one of the problematics of these collections is in a lot of donations, Indigenous works were given to, at McMaster we don't have any ethnographic works that way, but so we went through a process of repatriation of a few works, and also restitution of works. So those are sort of so works that were looted, basically by Nazis that are in museums wherever, and stuff. So those are current historical things that are happening in collections. And I was going to say we are very in good shape because we repatriated, and they're mostly done by donation. Indigenous work, which is highly problematic. And then with restitution of works, it's a legal process. It's a complicated process. And but what's really great about McMaster is that we don't have a lot of those works. And so there's space to grow in the collection, to have better representation of gendered women. First of all, a lot of the collection are male artists, and so the gender is linked. Culturally, in relation to global Africa and Black diasporic communities, and also on any racial-based communities in the context globally. So that those are big things that you're kind of trying to address. And leadership at the museum needs to be able to support that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Betty. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Yeah? Do you need, yeah, sure.
I was just wondering, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your journey with the pieces of work. It was extremely insightful. A lot of us here at Prince are students, so dating spaces that often don't often get, or we don't know about, so it's really cool to see it. One thing I was wondering is that you guys, it's clear that you guys are all very, very skilled and great artists, and you guys, maybe it's something you grew up with as a passion, or maybe it's something that you kind of come to learn, but I was wondering how you're able to, like, you recognize that this is something I'm good at, and then be able to contribute it, like, where did you kind of figure out, like, okay, this is where I fit in this larger mission and role, and then how do you kind of work towards your goals that you set?
Ooh. Thank you. Sure. You want
I feel like I went to school for photography. Just to note that the school that I went to wasn't like an art school, and I discovered, I guess, like in art, I was telling Erin, I started out drawing, and I guess I fell into photography, and I was like, I'm pretty good. Let me keep doing this, and I got into like a post-secondary program for photography, but I feel like that program didn't teach me what I know now. And I guess after graduation, I took a break. So just to give you like a sense, it wasn't like a moment where I'm like, oh, I'm really good at this, like I'm amazing. I think that within my practice, it is something that I constantly have to work on. And like, it's wonderful that Karen's here, because Karen, I have to, Karen, it's our love story. Oh, whatever, Karen. But, you know, this wonderful woman here was the first person to give me an opportunity to, or affirm me and say like, oh, you're actually an amazing photographer. So, yeah, so it does help in a way of, like, again, I didn't have that moment of, like, I always had that battle of saying, like, am I good? Should I be doing this? And when I got affirmed, it just kept on going along with it. So you're just seeing the product of me pushing myself and not stopping.
Yeah, I guess I could say something to that as well. I also went to OCAD to study photography, but I honestly kind of felt a little lost in it, and I started doing collage just like in my personal time, just for fun. And I brought it into my thesis year because for myself, I wasn't really creating photographs that were like speaking to me. And it was really like 2 years like behind closed doors working on collage, and then I was like, you know what? I like how this looks. This feels right. I feel like I'm speaking to something that is honest and personal, and it kind of like speaks to what I'm talking about like with my friends creatively. And I think it's just like to stick with something and like to love it for a second, and then you see some truth in it and you just double down. That's for myself anyways. Yeah.
Do you want a real honest answer? I wasn't good with math. I couldn't handle a career like with bodily fluids, so a doctor was out of order. So why not be an artist? But I always liked, like since I was a child, I always loved the visual arts. That was something I knew I wanted to do, and I just decided I was gonna go for broke, quite literally. But yeah, I knew I wanted to do photography. I had made my own like dark room in the basement, and it was something that I never deviated from, and I just decided that I was just gonna keep like going full steam ahead. And I've had so many crazy jobs to try to fund my art practice. Pretty much my jobs just help me maintain some level of non-financial stability. But it's just something that I always knew I wanted to do. Like it was intrinsic to me. And then I decided to do my master's because I thought doing my master's I would really be grounded in my practice and I would learn more. Yeah. And then you have people like Karen Carter who and Betty Julian, and they just say, you should lean into this, and then I just leaned into it. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think that's so important, especially because, I mean, coming from a Caribbean family who's very traditionally Caribbean, growing up, you think you only have certain choices to sort of like pursue as a career. For me, it was, well, she's either going to be a medical doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. That's it. Yeah. And so my first degree is an MD. And when I decided I don't want to work as a medical doctor, I think my grandma, I may have almost put her in the hospital. She was like,
oh my goodness.
She's gonna be a teacher. So I think there's a certain sort of amount of pride, but also of strength and guts that go into pursuing what is calling you. So I think that's incredibly powerful. Thank you. Anybody else for questions or comments? Yeah.
There's such a wonderful kind of dialogue, and I have a question that I'm personally curious about, and also selfishly for some of the students of mine that are here, we're taking a course called Insight and Inquiry, and part of what we talk about is different ways, different lenses that help us explore and understand and represent the world, and the arts being one of those lenses. And so I was wondering if any of you could share how art has been in your artistic practice, either as a practicing artist or as a curator, or even as a cultural theorist, and you know, some of the sort of cultural criticism for you, Stacy. How art has been a language for you in a way that other languages and other frames have like fallen short or haven't been able to kind of play that role, especially given the themes that you explore, which are so personal and so complex. Yeah, I think that I would love to hear about that. I think it would also be really helpful for some of the students who are here and thinking about that right now in that course.
As someone who's been really into technology, there's times as a teenager it was just inaccessible, but a piece of paper was always like accessible. So I think of like my family, everyone, they wouldn't say they draw, but they all like will draw faces on like pages, doodle here and there. A few people are really, have really good penmanship. And I think of art as like another mark-making tool to tell stories. And there's many ways to tell stories, but for myself, like, art's just been a way to like navigate like critical thought, and I've just embraced it, and it's kind of like helped me get through university and like navigate the world.
Yeah, I feel like with art, I use, like, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times already. Like, I'll read books or I'll discover things, and it just helps me make sense of the world. Yeah. So, like, with my photography, you're seeing the actualization of me, like, understanding and navigating certain things and certain questions that I may have had, and like, why are we not represented in this type of way, or why are we not seen as like religious iconography? Why, you know, it's and it's more of approaching it with curiosity and wanting to see that type of representation. So that's how I guess with my personal practice, it's how I explore that. What I just create what I want to see, or wanting to show, like, hey guys, look over here. It's actually like this important thing. And like I said, you'll see a lot with my works, like my Fanny Eaton series, my portrait of F.A., you see these themes that I've created.
Art as a visual language.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think, you know, we sometimes words can't always communicate what we're thinking. Yeah. And I think there's something about the tangibility of making. There's like a catharsis kind of methodologies that sometimes, you know, what's in my head, I don't quite have the words to express it, but maybe visually I'm seeing things that, like pictures that, you know, could communicate what I'm thinking. And so for me, it's just like a natural, innate thing for me just to kind of create. But research really does inform my art practice. So it's like this form of like reading as a language, and then how the things that I read, how can I make that visually? And because I also know that some people won't take the time to read history, a whole long, you know, thesis paper, or some people just, they don't think that way. But how could I maybe educate people visually about certain things in a way that they could relate to? Because aesthetically, I think aesthetically, most people love beautiful looking things in a way. So how can I make something that might be like in terms of, and I'll just use my Sugarcoat series, something that was really tumultuous, terrible, like time in history. How can I educate people, but making it still beautiful in a way? So I think that's kind of how I would answer that question in terms of like it being a visual language. Like, that's the best way I can express myself. And it just sometimes it says it for you. You don't have to say anything else.
Well, I'm a Libra. I'm totally into this. I'm like, yes, make it pretty. I mean, for me, I'm not an artist. I'm a teacher. I'm talentless. I mean, I read and write and think and question, and that's like the only thing that I feel I'm sort of like really good at. And so for me, that's what art does anyway, right? It's inviting people into thinking. It's thinking about things that you're looking at and slowing down and questioning and saying, oh, how is this interrogating what I thought I knew about, you know, this or that? And so it is very important to me as somebody who's teaching across the fields that I'm teaching in, you know, Black studies, Black Caribbean studies, not to just regurgitate like the histories of colonialism and enslavement, not to frame, you know, Afro-Latinx studies and Black Caribbean studies through the parameters of oppression, as we typically see. And so I aspire to be the teacher that I never had. And so to me, that's interesting because I then invite my students into thinking about things like street art in Haiti and what that is doing when the news is telling us that Haiti is just gang violence. And so that to me is super important to think about. But I'll stop talking. Any other questions? Or yeah? Cheryl?
But my question is maybe like how do you guys think like travel influences like your art? Like I think Janice talked about this how she recently went to Jamaica. Like, I feel like more recent times, but like how do you find like recent travel has like influenced your art and creation process?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
My practice is really rooted in traveling. So I go to Jamaica anywhere from 1 to 2 times a year because I've been really actively involved in trying to document. It's weird. It's like twofold. I'm documenting Jamaica as I see it, how I experience it, but then I'm also coming from a lens of what my father's experiences and what he's relayed to me. And so I had this one series that was dedicated to his hometown called Morant Bay. And then I went and traveled the parish and I photographed it. But then I just keep adding every year more layers to this project. And recently I started making pinhole like lenses for my camera, and I had set upon myself to document all 14 parishes of the island, making a new lens every time I go there. So for me, travel is it's paramount almost to my practice. And then because of some of those histories, I realized they're shared across other places. And so eventually I would love to be able to travel to those other places and connect the dots as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like travel is very essential and how it helps me inform myself as a person in the world, and like not only going back home but traveling to different places. I feel like you're able to make a better sense of the world of who you are as a person, and also going back home to create work. Like Marcus was shot in Kingston, Jamaica, and that was the house is my friend's house. His name's Herbie Miller, and he was the manager of Peter Tosh. So it was like even meeting people, and I met him on like my first solo trip down to Jamaica. And I think it's also really important, like if you're not scared, also doing solo traveling, because then that also opens up a door of like you're all by yourself and people are like, who are you? Yeah. What's your name? And you're able to make those type of connections. And if I never met Herbie during that first solo trip, I wouldn't have made Marcus. And that was just by chance. Like I went to Kingston. I spent some time there, and I went to a service at a synagogue there in Kingston, and. Because I was still doing, but in the process, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but doing research between Judaism and Rastafari. And I went to the synagogue just like, let me go to the service, and one of the members of the congregation of the synagogue, he had a gallery, and that's where I met Herbie. So just how the layers of that, and that's how Marcus came to be, right?
Like traveling has just got me really excited about art making, not just to Jamaica. Actually, I haven't been there since 2019, but been to like America a handful of times. I have family out there, and I actually just got off the plane this morning from Vancouver.
Literally.
I just bring it up because like every time it's like a two-way thing. Like in more like foreign places to here, sometimes it gets me excited about like traditional art, painting and photography. But then when I'm in America, there's a lot of experimentation and like pushing of the envelope, for lack of a better expression, that I see happening. So it gets me excited about the art making, but what that kind of does is get me really excited about just where I'm currently living and like what I could develop from like this point of view, because I do think there's something really interesting about this region of the world and how all the people come together here and like the technology to create things that we have access to here. So like, I guess travel has just made me grateful, to say the least. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think this has been such a powerful conversation and discussion. And so, do we have time for more questions, or should we? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this has been a powerful discussion. This has been super generative. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, we've heard Christina reflect on the risks and intentions of curating, and curating through an artist's lens. So I think that's super powerful. Aaron and Janice sharing how their perspectives and their practices shift and resonate in institutional spaces as well. And together, we've thought about what it means to archive, to belong, and to reimagine presence in the face of absence. What I carry from today is a sense of art's power, not only to make the unseen visible, but to insist on relation and relationality, to insist on memory, to create new openings, and to point us toward different futures for Black, Caribbean, and diasporic art and culture. And so, on behalf of ABLD and the museum and McMaster, I want to thank Christina Leslie, Aaron Jones, and Janice Reid for their insights, for your generosity, for your openness here with us today, and to thank all of you for joining us in this conversation. If you haven't yet visited the exhibition, please go. It is wonderful. It's open until October 17, and so it rewards slow looking, it rewards conversation, it rewards return. We also have the catalogs in the back if you would like to. I think we have the space for like a few more minutes if you want to grab food, etc. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.